All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Overcoming the Podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me. Her name is Emily Stearman, and I connected with her on Instagram, and I get this vibe of just authenticity. I'm showing up how I am. She's a survivor, and it's just something that I very much resonated with. So I was like, girl, we got to chat. So I'm going to pass it over to her to introduce herself, and then we'll get going.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a happy DM to get on Instagram. Like I think of Steve on Blue's Clues, like we just got a letter. That was the feeling that I had when I read your message.
And Steve is back. Have you seen?
I know. We needed it. The world needed
we
that
needed
healing.
him. I didn't realize how much that inner child needed Steve from Blue's Clues, but Here we are.
It's how it happened. But yeah, I'm just really glad that we connected. Exactly like what you said. We found each other, I think a little bit by accident on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from you, and I also really love your authenticity. So I'm just, we're here, we're sitting in the shit, we're here to do it, to go through it. I am a survivor. I'm a childhood sexual abuse survivor, as well as I guess complex trauma as kind of the diagnosis that I feel like fits me best. Yeah. I've been in therapy for my trauma for just about a year, which is like freaking hard. If you've ever gone to therapy for your trauma specifically, like therapy period is hard. You get so much credit, so much support. I'm so proud of you. I just, in my experience and personally in my life, the therapy that I did for other things other than trauma, it's been on a different level. My trauma therapy has opened up old wounds and like held the mirror up in front of me, and I just can't look away. Like there are so many really difficult facets of trauma therapy. So anyway, I've just been in my healing journey, I guess, for the last like year plus. I have 2 children. I'm married and a mom, and I love my kids. But parenting is also hard as hell when you are a childhood sexual abuse survivor. There's a lot of reparenting that I've had to do throughout that process. Yeah. A lot of recognizing of my own triggers and trying to figure out, okay, is this a trigger that I'm experiencing? Is little M needing this, or do my kids need this? And I feel like that's a daily experience.
That's powerful awareness, though, that you're already like a year into therapy and you're like, is this me? Or is this my kids? That's amazing. That's a huge breakthrough. It is hard, but it's powerful. So I want to commend you on that, because that's a hard realization to make.
Well, thank you. Yes, I love it. We celebrate the wins here.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you have to. I mean, sometimes they feel so small. You're like, I have to. It's like that mindset shift. Like it's so easy. And it's okay to get, like you said, like stuck in the shit, right? Yeah. Like it's okay to have those down times. And you know what? Like you brought up a really good point. Like healing is triggering. It is.
It really is.
It brings up so much more.
To heal, you have to go back to the heartache. Like it is voluntarily going to that place that broke your heart, that devastated you, that impacted your brain, that gave your brain a literal injury. So again, trauma therapy, if you're working through any trauma, you're a rock star.
What kind of therapy do you do? Like, are there different approaches your therapist uses?
Yeah. So we have done a lot of inner child work. I respond really well to inner child work.
Awesome.
I also really love just talk therapy. We've done some like interval training, I guess is what she calls it. Which is essentially just like letting the trauma come up and breathing through it, feeling through it. Like almost honestly, it feels like labor to me. Like it's a contraction. We go through, we breathe through the heartache, we let it come, and then we breathe out and we come back to our bodies and like, I'm safe again. Cool. EDMR. Those are the biggest modalities. I kind of have latched onto inner child work.
I like that though.
Yeah,
that's also, I mean, I know it's like psychology, but I'm a spiritual person too. And I'm like, ooh, that's also spiritual. So yeah, I mean, that's great. And I love how you're using different modalities too. And like finding out what works, and what works one day might not work the next.
Yes.
In mine, true. So I was I had been in therapy before. So a little bit of my story. So my parents divorced when I was around 15, 16. And then there was like triangulation, narcissism, all kinds of stuff. And so it was heavy abuse, and I was blamed as the kid for all this. So this was fun. But we went to court mandated therapy. So I did that when I was like 16.
Yeah.
And then made progress and got dismissed because they're like, well, if you're not going to sit down with your dad, then, we can't
can
really
only
do
do
anything
so
for
much.
you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's not happening. So that happened. And then I was assaulted as an adult when I was 22, and immediately I went into therapy. I couldn't function. Like, I was very, very bad. PTSD and my traumas from childhood linked. And so I was diagnosed with acute stress disorder, and at first, and then later PTSD as I was working through things, and it got chronic. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't do any kind of, I feel like it was like, I don't even know what type of therapy I did. I did a lot of like talk therapy and a lot of reflection, but like there was no structure. I feel like at that time I was so raw, I couldn't handle the structure. And then pandemic hits 5 years later. And what even?
So disrespectful.
So disrespectful. And all the stress comes up, and the stress alone, your body being in that state, is a trigger, right? So a lot of people regressed in their healing as far as like, things being triggered again and that kind of thing. And so that's where I was laid off from my job and trying to start my business. And then also I was at a 5-year trauma anniversary of the sexual assault that I didn't process, and was offered to do EMDR back in the day. And it was from a guy, and I was abused by a guy, and it was this big guy, and it was enough where I wasn't comfortable around men, and I ran out of the room. And they also told me, you're going to have to go all the way back to things with your dad. And I was like, nope, I'm out, and never looked back. But I actually, for about this last year, started diving deeper into therapy, and the things that helped me were EMDR, that reprocessing of everything. And, there were some things I wasn't able to get into, but the stuff that I did were like the deep attachment wounds. And we did a lot of like inner child stuff. So, and it really is like, sometimes you're actually doing something more structured, and then sometimes you're just kind of like talking, and, they're supporting you through it. Right.
Absolutely.
So I love hearing about people's therapy journeys, because it's always different. There's either people who just completely avoid it and it's like, absolutely not, or people who like wake up to trauma in their like older adult years. Right. And so you're just recognizing, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like, in your 20s or 30s, you're waking up to this, or when you start having kids, or, whatever it is. And then you decide what you're going to do with it. Or you're someone who's been proactive the whole time. It's just, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. And I think one thing that I was thinking too is like, there's, for people, like there can be the stigma of, it's shameful to go to therapy. And, that's how I was raised. And it was a manipulation tactic, obviously, to keep me unhealthy and controlled. But, the whole connotation in society is that, well, you're unstable if you're in therapy. You have the problem, like, and when really it's a support, and it's a help, and it can get worse before it gets better. But as someone who is now on the other side of it, it's so worth it.
It really
is. It's so
changes so much. I love what you discussed about what therapy has looked like for you, because shame, I talk all about shame. That's my life. That is what I do, because I was one of those people who woke up to my trauma. I didn't remember a lot of it until I was married and with a human being who I was pretty open and vulnerable with. And it got to the point where I couldn't keep picking and choosing the vulnerability. I had to face it all myself. And I chose to share it with my spouse because he is a trustworthy person. But the shame of my experiences has kept me quiet. It's kept me from speaking up, and it's kept me from reaching out. It's kept me from seeking the support. And there are still moments in my therapeutic journey where I can't do heavy days. I can't do the processing. I can't do the intervals or the revisiting of stuff. I just have to talk. And I still feel shame of that sometimes when I'm like, I have the tools when I'm having these conversations with myself. I have the tools. I could go to this place. Like, I'm talking on the internet. I have a podcast all about this. I have a business where I coach people all about how to work through their shame and their feeling of they're alone and they're bad, how to overcome that and work through that. And here I am still feeling those things. And it's just proof
Yeah.
that we really have never, I don't think we will ever reach a healed place.
Nope.
I think we are healed. Like
Yes.
certain things could be healed within us, but I don't think overall we'll ever be this fully actualized healed person. I think that will be the ultimate hope and direction that I take in my life. That will be like my long-term goal. That will be what I hope to be remembered by, is that I healed my shit.
Yeah.
Because I believe fully that when we heal our stuff, we help the others around us who are, one, needing to heal theirs, or two, just watching our example and seeing how we process things, how we deal with things, how we cope.
Yes. Like
Because,
breaking patterns for people.
yes,
like just you are like, that change maker. You are breaking like that generational trauma just by showing up and taking the burden of healing. It's like for all the people around you, right? And sometimes that's what it takes. And it's like, why me? I'm tired. Like I'm freaking tired.
Yes.
I can't even tell you how many times I've just screamed into the sky, like, why does this always happen to me? Why am I the one who has to see all the dysfunction? Why am I the one who gets blamed for everything? Like, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. But once you get out of that victim mindset, it's empowering to be able to be the one to take back the power, to take back your life. Like to me, there's nothing like that. It's like, oh yeah, I get to decide what my life's going to be like. Not these people who abused me. I get to decide.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to let them control my responses and my emotions for the rest of my life when they're not even around. Screw that. Like, no, So, and I love what you said too about like, I do this, I help people. And I'm the same way. I coach people. I have courses. I have a podcast. Like it's interesting because, that's why this podcast is overcoming. It's like that consistent, right? We know that there's things that are going to come up, but I think that where you and I resonate so much is just, you just got to own it sometimes. And sometimes the best thing you can do is be like, it sucks. It's hard.
Yeah, it sucks so bad.
This is all I can do. I posted a reel. So, I had some deep, deep triggers that I hadn't faced in a long time. And, I basically just down to like my basic security was shaken. What is that? Wow.
I would say
my brain
shook.
Yeah. Shook. All right. Anyway, my brain's fun right now. And, we're just owning our shit. And so I was having a hard time even getting out of bed. And it was to the point where like my Instagram was starting to gain some traction and people were like, oh my gosh, I'm so drawn to you. And I'm just like, I can't keep up right now. I'm so overwhelmed. And I literally sat the camera down. I'm like, I'm going to show just what I do when I can barely get out of bed and with the journaling or whatever. And it turned into me just sobbing, not expecting this to come out, just like heavy sobbing and, like trying to convince myself I wasn't crazy. And I ended up just like recording it. And I showed piece of it. It's like, this is what I can give you right now. This is what I have. And I can't even tell you how many people messaged me and were like, thank you for showing that. This is the part that no one shows. And it's so frustrating because we are all there. Right. So I kind of want to focus on, the kind of theme of sitting in your shit, like what it's like, when there's shame, when there's all the stuff, when you have all the tools and you have everything, but you're like, what really is, what am I going to do right now? I could, but I don't want to. I'm exhausted. Right. So in those moments, what do you do?
Well, actually the biggest hurdle, mountain that I have been facing and overcoming is first recognizing. I did not recognize or understand or think that I was experiencing trauma. I didn't recognize the abuse. It was just normal. It was just the pattern of my life. It was a pattern of my childhood and of my family. And it's also really heartbreaking because I don't know a single person. I've never met a single person who is all good and all bad. I've never met a single person who is doing a really fantastic job 100% of the time. So for me, recognizing that I came from people who really tried and who did love me, who do love me, but also who
Mhm.
caused me my deepest wounds. My deepest pain came from abuse I experienced as a kid
Yeah.
in my family. Um, and then also, as a childhood sexual abuse survivor, I was abused by multiple people, all people my family knew.
Mm.
I just never knew how to express this deep love I had for my family, but also the deep hatred I had for them because they hurt me
Yeah.
so much, because I
Yes.
experienced so much pain as a child in that family of dysfunction. And then as
Mhm.
I grew and I dated pieces of shits, not all of the people I dated were pieces of shit, but most of them were. There's a very strong piece of shit theme. And
Been there. Yeah.
and honestly, I guess that's even unfair of me to say, because they were probably just also really hurting, not
Mhm.
excusing the abuse, because abuse is never okay. We never
Yeah.
excuse it. Just recognizing though that the people I dated also were hurting and they chose to hurt other people. Like that TikTok
Yes.
thing that was going around, hurt people,
Yes.
hurt people.
Yep.
So overcoming for me has looked like acknowledging, has looked like sitting
Mm.
down and going, you know what? This happened. It happened to me. It happened to a real human being, and it doesn't have to meet like the criteria of all these other survivors that I've been inspired by and
Mhm.
taken notes from all my life. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be so bad that it makes everybody cringe. I don't even have to tell everybody. There's a lot that I don't tell anyone, that I
Yeah.
write in my journal, or that I tell my husband or my therapist.
Mhm.
um I do share some of my abuse on the internet and some of my healing, but sometimes when I'm like, man, am I saying too much? I just look at like the stacks of notes I have in my phone, like the pages and pages and pages and
Yeah.
pages of all the stuff I'm not sharing. And I go, okay,
Yeah.
no, I'm good.
You're like, I'm doing
I
good.
have a
I'm
good
feeling good.
ratio. Yeah.
I love it.
But yeah, so acknowledging has been huge for me. I know that we are supremely good at gaslighting ourselves because
Because that's
we
how
have
people maintained the abuse for us. So that's all we knew,
exactly.
right? Mm-hmm.
Well, and a lot of my abuse came from like this idea of like we're doing our best.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of it was like I don't know, if I grew up religious, so there's like the sin of commission and then the sin of omission, and the
Okay.
omission is like what you don't do. So a lot of
Mhm.
my trauma came from what didn't happen as a kid, like
Yeah.
what I wasn't given, or what I wasn't taught or
Mm-hmm.
showed. And a lot
Yeah.
of that was just like healthy coping, like how to
Mm-hmm.
have an argument without it turning into a volcanic eruption, right?
Yes.
How to deal with the really strong cognitive dissonance between I love this person, but I don't like how they treat me. That was
Mm-hmm.
none of that was modeled. And a lot of it, again, was
Yeah.
just like the culture. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of it was exactly like what you said. Everybody just kind of, that's just what we were all shown. And so we've all
Yeah.
just been shown this, and then we all just keep doing it. That's how I envision shame. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
teach shame getting past, is we all
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like look around and go, oh, so they hate their bodies today, so I'm going to hate my body today. Like
Yeah.
we are just like, some of us are giving it, some of us are picking it up, some of us are creating it, some of it's passed down through generations and familial lines, like
Yep.
all of this. So when I get into those points of like gaslighting myself and I'm like, oh, it's not that bad, I'm reminded that I get to decide how much it impacted me. Little M gets to decide. And
Mm-hmm.
little M has been pretty clear on how heartbroken a lot of things made her. She's
Yeah.
also been really clear on there's some really bright spots in my life and in my childhood. There's
Yeah.
some really phenomenal people, some really phenomenal experiences. And that's great, but I was only ever shown how to live in that phenomenal place. I was only ever pushed to be happy, to be
Mm-hmm.
thankful, to show gratitude, to pray for it to be gone,
Yeah.
to recognize that other people had it worse. And I
Mm-hmm.
was never shown how to sit with the true heartache, the abuse, the really
Yeah.
devastating things that were done to me and given to me. I was
Mm-hmm.
not shown how to do that. So I protected myself, really proud of myself for protecting myself. I
Yeah.
buried that shit down, and I didn't focus on it. I didn't think about it. I knew
Yeah.
it was there, like it felt in my chest. That's where it sat in my body, my
Mm-hmm.
chest and my stomach. And it was like murky, kind of like sand in water. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have a shape, but it was still very present.
Yep.
And I lived with that for a long, long time. And then when I was 21, I got 22, I got married, and that's when it all started. That's when I started to have, I guess my reassociation is how I've heard it phrased.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It feels like I finally woke up to the trauma, and the
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah.
And I am still, so that was 7 years ago that I started remembering. I am
Mhm.
still to this day uncovering memories. I am still like,
Yeah.
I feel like a paleontologist, like dusting off the dinosaur bones. I've got my
Yeah.
little duster. Oh, that
Mhm.
was a good memory. Oh, that was not a good memory, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Um, and so again, so much of my overcoming has been allowing myself to just sit there and dust the bones off without any
Mm.
judgment, without rushing to put it in the happy category, in the
Yeah.
it's okay, it wasn't that bad, I was fine, I made it through, or the this is the worst thing that ever happened to me and these people are terrible and awful and wrong. Just sitting with it, like overcoming looks like allowing it to just show up,
Yeah.
because for so long my brain, my heart, my mind, was saying, "Hey, Em, there's some stuff that you haven't looked at. You want to come over here and look at it?" And I was like, "Hell no, I don't want to look at it." And
Mhm.
I shut that door again and again and again. And so honestly, it's a level of like rebuilding trust with myself.
Yeah.
Of saying, okay, I decide today I'm going to go open that door and I'm going to look at those bones. We're going to sit and we're going to dust some off. And I'm not going to be harsh to myself. I'm not going to be cruel to myself. I'm not going to gaslight myself. I'm just going to sit with the bones and let them tell me their story. And that has built a lot of trust with myself. That has helped
Yeah.
little M come to me more and say, okay, big M, here's another memory that you didn't want me to ever show you. So, but I'm going to show you now because you're telling me that you're ready. Um,
Mhm.
and I know this like sounds, sometimes I talk about
It
inner
doesn't.
child work,
Well, no, here's the thing. Anyone here who's listening, they'll they'll understand, or they
yeah.
will by the end of these things, because
Yes.
these are things that, I mean, in trauma there's so many things. It's like, wow, I feel crazy doing this, like I really do, and I don't
But
even like
it
that word.
works, but it
It does.
helps.
All the compartmentalization and like talking to these parts that are hurt and bringing in the parts that are strong right now and are, have evolved and see things differently. Like that is what personally helped me, was
Yeah.
bringing my more healed, evolved self into these
Into
memories
yes,
and seeing it
taking
differently.
taking
Mm-hmm.
the full knowledge and scope that you have now and
Yeah.
sitting with that little person that you once were and going, "Hey, you're a rock star. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about this," and
Yeah.
teaching them. Like that was so impactful because for a long time for me too, I remember being in junior high. I remember in a textbook, it was a health textbook, like for health class. I
Mm-hmm.
remember reading the word molesting or molestation and thinking, oh, and like it was like a click in me, knew that's what it had been called. I mean, it's abuse, it's
Mm-hmm.
sexual abuse. But
Yeah.
I remember reading that word going, that's what happened to me.
Mm.
And then, but like slamming that door shut
You're
again,
like,
like,
nope,
nope,
no,
nope, nope, nope,
nope,
nope.
that did not,
None of
did
those
not.
memories, none of those memories. Go
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Um, so exactly like what you said though, taking the healed parts of ourselves to those hurting
Mm-hmm.
parts is truly like we heal ourselves. Like it's incredible how
We do.
we get the support. Therapy is wonderful, books are wonderful, conversations like this are wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that you do, like spiritual things, physical things, emotional things, all those things are great. Journaling,
Yep.
riding your bike, do it. If it feels right, do it.
Mm-hmm.
But recognize fully that you help yourself, like on the timeline of your life. If you think it's chronological, great. I know that like I've been talking to some people who are like, it's like, it feels like more like quantum theory, like Ant-Man and like Marvel universe. Like we're all happening at the same
Yep.
time,
Yep.
however you want to believe it. I just know that for me, I have literally sat with little M, who is 5 years old and beginning her experience with childhood sexual abuse.
Yeah.
I have sat with that child and I have held her while she wept. And I
Mm-hmm.
will not ever have to justify that to anyone because I'm the one who experienced that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
again, exactly like what you're saying, it might seem crazy, but if it feels right in your gut, if it's lining up, if it feels like
Yeah.
what you have felt like in the past when something felt right, if it
Mm-hmm.
feels that same way, then it's probably important for you. It's probably going to
Yeah.
help you in your overcoming.
Well, and basically what you brought up is just cognitive restructuring.
Yeah.
It feels different, but like that's like a huge fancy term in like trauma right now. It's a big step to healing trauma, is going back to things and being able to not only see things more objectively and
Yeah.
bring yourself back to kind of support that, go through those memories, but it's also like processing it through your adult lens now, through whatever
Yes.
lens you have, right? And you can recognize that it is both and,
Yes.
so it is both the happy and the sad. They tried as hard as they could and they really hurt me, and
Mhm.
so it's okay. And actually, I personally think that it's really powerful to have that. And, that's something that I have with my family. Like, my biological father was a whole other level of overt narcissism. And that's something
Yeah.
that's just not forgivable to me because he
Yeah.
intentionally like took pleasure in my pain and like manipulated me for fun, like a puppet.
Yeah.
But my mom, who, I had no contact with for a while and we're kind of working things out ish. She just kind of ignored things. She shut down. So things were happening in the house and no one knew until I was 15. And I don't know that there was necessarily sexual abuse, but I did not feel safe. There was physical abuse, there was psychological manipulation, all that stuff. And I still don't
Yeah.
remember things from 9 years
Oh,
old and
yes.
earlier, so it's like, I
Yes.
know that I know I felt uncomfortable. I know that I was triggered. I know these things, but I also know that my mom was so overloaded. She did everything she could to take care of the family and do everything physical because my dad was a lazy piece of crap
Yeah.
and, keep things physically going. But then emotionally, she couldn't be there for her kids.
Yeah.
And she never learned, like you were talking about, that emotional regulation, those coping skills, to have those hard conversations. What she does, she just shuts down. She acts like things
Yes.
don't bother her and she gets passive aggressive and she'll criticize you and take it out on you and poke at you and try to control your life because she wishes she controlled her own. And it's
Yeah.
hurtful, but that's all she knows.
Yeah.
And so, and having those hard conversations is like, this is hurtful. And she'll even shut down and be like, I'm not selfish. I don't do this. I'm like, well, you do. And,
Yeah.
but again, I look back and it's generational patterns of, well, this is what they did and this is what they did. And it's like, it makes a lot of sense when you put it all together. So can you blame them? Maybe not. And I also kind of feel like, sitting with their inner child. Like, what would that be like
Yes.
if you were
Oh
sitting
my gosh,
with your inner
yes.
child? And that's so hard and complex. And some people are like, oh no, screw that. I don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
And that's
F
fine. You
that.
you don't
Yeah.
have to, right? But just, as you kind of evolve and you're healing, you've been doing more and more. That's something for me that it's like, with my mom, I had this really like best friend vibe, I felt like, but I also was like trying to get attention that I never got. And deep down, there was
Yeah.
this like emotional abandonment when I was looking for safety and the other parent wasn't there. That
Yes.
emotionally was so shut out. Right. And so it's like, I was really upset with her for a very long time for that. And even like criticizing me and trying to control me as an adult and like, and again, not even recognizing she did it. But,
Yeah.
it's like, I see this scared child shut down, not knowing any better, that if you just be quiet, you act like it didn't happen, it doesn't bother you.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, when you're living for 16 years and married to an overt narcissist who is just a miserable person,
Yeah.
what else are you going to do? But also knowing that your kids are kind of messed up from that and
Mm.
having to own that. But, a lot of people in my family, especially, no one goes to therapy. No one wants
No.
to admit anything happened.
Why would we do that? Why would we
I'm
go to
English and
therapy?
German. So, we're all
What?
work. We don't talk
Just
about things
eat your feelings and
Mhm.
just like never talk about it. That's
Ever.
great.
And
Let's
if you
do
do, you're
that.
a threat. And how dare you? And it's literally like, I've had family members who are very upset. I'm even sharing things on here and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
someone's got to change things. Someone's got to help
Yeah.
people, And so it's just interesting because it is that kind of parallel in healing where,
Yeah.
like you said, like it's all the things and just holding space
Mhm.
for all parts. And that's hard. That's really hard. And that's really heavy. And because we want someone to blame, right? We want to be angry. We want to like,
Yes.
we want to scream. We want to cry. We want, just they get justice or whatever it is. But it's
Yeah.
just, it's not as simple as that,
Yep.
especially within complex trauma.
Yes. And it's really frustrating because sometimes that's what we deserve. Sometimes that's what we deserve. We deserve there to be somebody to blame because we
Mhm.
were hurt. We were taken advantage of. We were abused, we were neglected, we were abandoned. Like if you're sitting here, if you're taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast, then it's probably because it resonates with you and you're probably like,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, some part of me really hurts too.
Mhm.
And the most liberating, while also being really frustrating but more liberating thing that I've learned is to give that to myself. to
Mhm.
give that you were wronged. It
Mhm.
was not okay.
Yeah.
Like flipping tables kind of energy to
Mhm.
myself,
Mhm.
and exactly like what you're saying, to kind of be the person who brings that into your family. I won't say that I'm the only person in my family, because I have um siblings who are also doing some work, but
Mhm.
to be a huge part of that,
Yeah.
to be a main player in bringing that change and that releasing of that generational trauma,
Mhm.
it's a privilege for sure, but
Yeah.
it's also hard as hell.
It is.
So in this journey, as in this conversation of overcoming, I again just want to point out, like what you said earlier, there's going to be hard days. There's going to be days where you
Mhm.
feel like you're Jack on the Titanic, like arms out, wind blowing, pretty music playing. And
Mhm.
then there's other days where you're going to be crumbled up on a chair crying because you feel
Yes.
like everything is falling around you and you don't know who you are.
Yes.
You're going to question yourself. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going
Mhm.
to go back to those old, like, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I'm the problem. Those thoughts
Mhm.
are going to resurface.
Yep.
I try really hard to write down my feelings when I'm feeling good so that I
Mhm.
can go back to them and be reminded of
It's good.
them when I
Mhm.
am crying in a chair, when I'm having those hard days.
And
Because
sometimes
exactly,
it's one day after another. Like one day you're on
yeah,
top of the world, the next one you're right at the bottom. And you're like, how? I was
yep,
just happy.
yep.
Like, yeah,
I
that's
was
a
just
really good point.
processing through a lot of this, and now it feels like I'm back to square freaking
Mhm.
one. And
Mhm.
that literally, it's like a cycle. It's a cyclical nature. Like when you allow the trauma to come up, when you allow yourself to be a trusting person,
Mhm.
and you go through those reframing steps, when you sit with those heartbreaking experiences, I think there are times where I have to revisit memories multiple times before I have
Yeah.
figured out how I feel about it.
Mhm.
um it's not like a one and done. Like we really,
Oh
again,
no.
we glamorize everything, including healing. It's like one day we made this really inspirational video and put it on the internet with this really pretty song, and like everybody thinks, wow, they're self-actualized, I want to be like them. Actually, no,
Yeah.
I'm eating pizza over the sink like a rat because it's the first meal I've had, because I've had a literal breakdown in my bedroom, and
Mhm.
my husband took the kids to the park because I can't function right now,
Yeah.
um and like just the constant, I guess it's a constant pressure, a constant buzzing in my
Mhm.
ear is the way that I like to describe it, of what are we going to do with these emotions today? Like how am I going to deal, where am I going to put these today? Am I going to
Mhm.
like tackle them, or am I just going to let them sit and I'm going
Yeah.
to do the best I can with what I have?
Yeah.
Like that's really what overcoming is. It's not like the pretty
Yes.
inspirational.
Yes.
Those are fun. Those are great. We love a good glow up.
Oh
We love
yeah.
a
I
good
mean, I'm like,
healing.
I got, and it's like
Yeah.
inspiring to yourself. Like I've done so many things. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, looking back at my own progress, that's what helps me keep going. I feel like,
Yes.
and like I'm the same way. Like on my social media stuff, I share the highs, but you also have to share the lows. And again,
Yeah.
we look at social media through a filter. We see what we want to
Mm.
see, and also we post what we want to post. So, do we
Yes.
want to post us being vulnerable all the time? Do we want to post like
Yes.
no, I mean,
Having
I'm an
a,
open book. That's just how I
yeah.
am. But most people, that's like, that's not fun. That's not comfortable.
Yeah.
And, so then people are looking like, oh, like I can't be there. There's no way I'll get there. Like they don't see like the ebbs and flows and the humanness behind it all. You just see the highlight reel. So
Yep.
remember that,
Yep.
that and even people who aren't talking about, even to their friends, like doesn't mean people haven't been through
Yes.
stuff.
Yes. That has been the most eye-opening experience since I've shared my journey with shame and abuse,
Mm-hmm.
since I've been real vocal about it, since I've started my podcast. I get messages and emails every single day from
Yep.
people I have never met and from people I have known my entire life,
Yes.
saying, "Hey, I have this really tender, important to me, heartbreakingly serious experience," and they share it with me, or they share pieces of it with me, and I
Mm-hmm.
am continually floored by, one, people's resilience, their just badass grit, their
Mm-hmm.
determination to keep going, to
Yep.
keep trying, to
Yep.
wake up another day and try again and give themselves grace while doing so.
Yep.
But also, trauma does not look like one person. Abuse does not look like one face. We don't have very many
Mm-mm.
physical characteristics in common at all. We all are going through something.
Yep.
And this opening up of this discussion, this like discord, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's it's on one hand incredibly empowering, but also it's incredibly draining. Like I have to remind myself to keep myself in check.
Yes.
I can't go help 15 people with their shame and their trauma today and then expect myself to just bounce back and like do it again, you know? And
yeah, you got to set those boundaries for sure. And be honest about it. Be like, hey, human healing moment. This is what's going on. Most people understand, but yeah. I get you.
But like, as people are opening up to me and sharing their stories and we're connecting and we're making these bridges and we're building new healing neurotransmitting pathways in our brain. And we're going, hey, this part of my brain, you're loved. This part of my heart, you're doing great. We have to remember that in all of this work, it is literally like what you said, revisiting the pain. And so when the pain shows up, we have to use compassion and kindness and recognize we're all going through it. Let's be kind, you know, let's be gentle. Let's be grace-filled. Let's give each other some slack. And when you're not going through it, when you're having like a kick-ass day, when you are on top of the world, when you're having one of those Jack on the Titanic moments, I always try to give a little to somebody to maybe help them, like to give a little more energy, to give a little bit of a kickstart, like a boost, because I know that there are people who do that for me on my down days, on my
same,
on my sitting with the bones days, you know? So
absolutely.
Pretty much what I'm trying to explain is overcoming is not one thing and it's not one feeling and it's not one answer.
Nope.
It's pretty
all the
much
things all at once.
I have no like easy, like 5 things to know.
Oh,
like
it's
you
not
might be overcoming.
Yes, it's not supposed to be at all. And that's, you know, and I love that you're just like, it's not. And that's exactly it. That's the whole freaking point. Ding, ding, ding. You figured out the podcast. You win. Like it really is. It's everything and nothing all at once. Right. I mean, it's just, it's life. It's life. It's like sometimes the stress for me, it's like, when everything is happening all at once or nothing is happening at all. Right.
Oh my gosh.
Still overcoming. And all, you know, it's a continuous process. We're humans, we're growing, we're learning, we're overcoming. Even if we're like, so even if we're not even processing like trauma memories anymore, and we're at this point where we're like still working on like our beliefs or whatever it is that still was holding on from trauma.
Yeah.
We're still going to have those times where we're going to hit a new level and a new level and a new level. And we're just going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And that's just what we do as human beings. And if we're not, then maybe we're doing it wrong. You know, it's like, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to learn. We're supposed to adapt. We're supposed to connect within and connect with others. Like all of this together, that is all overcoming. That's, you know, it is just the process of moving forward no matter what. And sometimes that's taken 10 steps back, but you're still going to be going forward. You know what I mean? And so one of the things, like the tools in those moments. So I'm an occupational therapist and it's a lot about in the rehab professions, like kind of in the same realm of like physical therapy and speech therapy. It's about like rehab. And so for occupational therapy, it's just essentially anything that takes up time, what's meaningful, important to someone's daily life. Okay. So it could be something as like getting dressed if someone has a stroke, but it could also be like talking to a trauma survivor and them just like needing to know how to structure their day. It's essentially problem solving. And so in OT school, we're taught different approaches. And a lot of what you see in rehab is like, okay, we're going to teach you the skills. We're going to do this. We're going to hit this goal. We're going to go, 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 go. But the beautiful thing about occupational therapy is this understanding of just, it's not changing right now.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? If you aren't going to use, you can't use all those skills right now. You can't use everything you need. You're not progressing. You're not moving forward. It's not one of those like hoo-ha days.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You adapt and modify everything else around you to fit what you need that day. So even something as simple as you sitting by yourself and your husband taking the kids to the park.
Yeah.
That is progress. That is okay. That is still overcoming. And actually, it probably was extremely powerful and helpful for you because it gave you the space to do what you needed to do. So then when you come back, you're like, oh yeah, you're not burning yourself out more. You're not, you know, you're not possibly getting shorter with your kids when you're having those harder times. You are taking the space, recognizing what you need for you and saying, it's okay for my day to change. It's okay for my plan to change because I need to put myself first, what I need to do to be able to be there for everyone else. I got to put myself first sometimes. And that means recognizing what has to be different. My routine, if I'm running around and I'm not sleeping well, what can I prioritize in my routine? What needs to go? What can I
Yeah.
delegate? What, like what's important today on the day that I can't get out of bed? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it eating? Probably. Is it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Is it this to-do list that I know is piling up and I have a week to do, but I have to do it right now? No.
Yeah.
So it's really the ability to restructure your life and get used to problem solving through this. And as you
Yeah.
go more into therapy, and like that's a huge part of what I do in coaching as well, is to look at your life and like functionally and see the functional impacts of how trauma shows up in your life.
Yeah.
And I've even found for me, it helps to have like crisis plans of when this happens, this comes off my plate. When this happens, this is the comforts I need. When this, you know what I mean? And just kind of
Yeah.
having something set up. So when that day comes, I have everything I need for me.
Yeah.
I know I tell my people, hey, there's going to be a code word when I can't really talk much and I'm like really overwhelmed. Just so you know, that means that I'm having a really hard day and I would need something. And sometimes I can't explain what's happening. But if I'm just like this word, like,
Yeah.
it's pineapple day, then they
Yeah.
know, okay, so just like setting up systems, setting up your support ahead of time, being proactive, I feel like is so helpful in healing and growing and overcoming, because we're not always going to have that. Even if, like you said, like I have all the tools, I can do it, but and that's okay.
Yes. Yep.
You don't need
Ugh.
it. You can adapt, you can
Yes.
modify your life. You can lay in bed if you want, you can take a sick day at work. Like, it's, the world is not going to stop because you're healing.
Yep.
But ultimately it's going to keep going, and you have to figure out how you can fit in the most helpful way for you in that time,
Yeah.
and
Which
not
a
have the
lot
guilt.
of that takes, I was going to say, a lot of that takes like this idea, this releasing of the guilt and the shame,
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
releasing of the, if I take my sick day, I am lazy and bad and stupid.
Yes.
Actually, what if we reframe that,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of moral insertion of superiority when we just get shit done, when we just do it,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of how we feel, regardless of if it's a pineapple day.
Yep.
There is a moral hierarchy of, well, I had all this really hard stuff happen to me and I still did it. It's
Yeah.
like, well, we're all still doing it. Like we're
Yeah.
here. That's what we're here for. Like we're doing it. We're just doing
Exactly.
it looks differently for
Mm-hmm.
me, and it does you. And that's been a really powerful part of my like giving myself credit, I guess, my grace,
Mm-hmm.
my self-grace and compassion is
Yes.
recognizing that my getting through it looks differently than other people's getting through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can use other people as like inspiring ideas, but my
Mm-hmm.
life and my journey won't look like anyone else's. And it
No.
probably shouldn't either, because
No.
I'm not them and I don't have all the things
Exactly.
they have.
Your trauma, like I always say, like your trauma is as unique as you are.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's literally the brain, whether or not it processes a trauma has to do with your supports, your internal capability to manage something, your external
Yep.
supports, like that depends on how it manifests in your brain and in your body.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's literally that individualized thing. And so when we compare ourselves, that's really harmful
Yeah.
to not only ourselves, but it's like, it's, you could get stuck in this like cycle of comparing, and then you get in this like self gaslighting, or
Yeah.
and then you like don't speak up about the things that hurt. It's like,
Yes.
what I believe is like everyone deals with what they need to deal with in
Yeah.
this life. That's just a personal belief of mine. But it's not to say that like, so my trauma, okay, like my heavy trauma that is big for me, it's not to say that someone who on the outside looks like they have a perfect life, if something happens to them, it's not to say that that's not going to be as hard for you as hard for them as your trauma your entire life has
Yeah.
been, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean, everything, life is perspective.
Yep.
And and so it's as individual as you are, just like you're healing your growth journey, it's as individual as you
Yeah.
are, and you have to learn how to
Absolutely.
put yourself in the center of it
Yep.
and be
Which is
okay with
tricky
that.
when you've been avoiding yourself
Mm-hmm.
because you have all the heartache. It's
Yes.
hard to make yourself the center when you don't like to sit with yourself. Let me tell you.
Yes. And then especially the pandemic brought it out for all of us. We're like, why do I have this
Yes.
much time with myself?
Yes.
I don't want this.
I'm so tired of being in my feelings all the
Oh my
time.
gosh, yeah. Oh yeah. And that's that, honestly, I feel like that's a huge part of the reason that we've seen an influx in people remembering their trauma and healing and
Yeah.
going back to therapy. We had the time. We were forced
Yes,
to
we
sit down
had
and
the
face it.
time. Isn't that so? Oh my gosh, the literal simplicity, but also the power in we had the time
Mm-hmm.
proves
Mm-hmm.
that we were not built to just get over stuff. We were
No.
not made to just process like a machine. We were made to have the
Mm-hmm.
crawl in a hole days. We were made to have the hard days. We were made to
Yeah.
have the code word days. The
Yep.
fact that we're finally giving ourselves that kind of out of necessity and all this stuff is coming up is proof that that's how we're
Yes.
wired.
Yes, exactly. I absolutely agree that the moment that we give ourselves that space, I mean, it's like it's cathartically beautiful, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's hard, but it's just the beginning of this deeper understanding of yourself and
Yeah.
integrating all of these parts of yourself and being able to say, you know what? I can do this. I can get through this
Yeah.
because the thing is, it's there anyways. It's impacting you anyways, whether you have
Exactly. Whether you process
awareness or
it or
not.
not. Yeah.
It's there.
That was one of my breakthrough moments in therapy pretty early on when I was talking to my therapist. Like, my therapist knows me really well. She knows when to push me and when to not push me. Cause there are days where I'm like, no, thank you very
Yeah.
much. And then there are days where I'm ready to be pushed. I'm ready to do that, you know?
Yeah.
And one day she was kind of pushing me and I was like, well, well, and then this happened and then I felt this way. And I'm like telling her all this stuff. And she's like, so either we can talk about it and we can work on it together. If you'd like my help, that's what I'm here to do. Or you can just keep carrying it around with you the way you've been carrying it, but it's still there, whether you choose to focus on it and proactively like integrate tools to
Mm-hmm.
fix it or to figure it out.
It
And I was
is.
like, shut up right now. Like, take your degrees and leave. I don't even want to, like, the level of disrespect that you just put on me, like, it just Jedi mind tricking me
So
like
true.
that. Like,
So
you're
true.
not wrong. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Patricia. Like, I know I'm
Yep.
not carrying it well, but it's incredible because so much can happen in such a short amount of time. Like, I have not
Mm-hmm.
even been in therapy for a full year and I'm already night and day difference. Like, I remember
Yeah.
in the beginning telling my therapist that I would never disclose that I was abused and that I would never
Mm-hmm.
tell my abuser. And I have totally flipped the table on that. And like, I'm rewriting a lot of things and changing a
Yep.
lot of things
Yep.
and like experiencing things as they come up, but letting myself have the freedom to do that has been beautiful.
I
Um,
love that.
and, and what you said just a minute ago of like learning and recognizing about yourself, there's all
Mm-hmm.
these parts of ourselves that we can integrate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been like really relearning who I am. And it's been
Yes.
beautiful. There are parts of myself that I didn't know, that I didn't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, I'm kind of cool.
I
I
know,
kind
right?
of like myself. I kind of really enjoy myself.
Yeah.
Like, and it's for the longest time. This is what like I was taught. Like, you can't be full of yourself. You have to focus on other people because
Yep.
if you're full of yourself, that's prideful. And then that makes it all about you.
Yep.
Well, no, we all have a few narcissistic traits, but it's actually not bad to not hate ourselves.
No, not at all.
Psych. Newsflash. Write it in the paper. It's not the
It's true.
worst thing to not hate ourselves. It's not a slippery slope where
Mm-mm.
we start to
Mm-mm.
love ourselves and then it becomes all about us. It's actually more like we start to love ourselves and then we love other people better and more
Yes.
because we have more room for ourselves and we just inherently have more room for other people. It's not this slippery slope of narcissism and like making our life only about us. It's actually a way to include more connection and more light and more love in our lives is
Absolutely.
loving ourselves and sitting with ourselves. It's this beautiful thing.
I agree. I agree. Oh my gosh. Okay. I could talk about this forever. But I know we can't. So, lives, energy, all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
what I'm thinking to kind of wrap this all up, because I feel like just sitting in the shit, like all of the stuff we talked about is so powerful.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who is just starting and is struggling with just sitting with it?
Oof.
I know I'm throwing the big ones.
Okay, so the first thing I would say with all my heart, my love, all the energy and goodness that I possess in my body is that this process, this journey that you're starting on is so important because you are important.
Yeah.
This process will be and is for you. So if you're standing on the edge of this precipice, feeling like you have to do all these things for all these people, you have to heal in all these certain ways, have to meet all these criteria, that has to be bad enough that other people justify you. Work to release that, work to let go of that, work to just sit with yourself and say, self, because I feel this way, because I'm experiencing this, because this is showing up in my life, it's worth some time. It's worth some energy. And it doesn't need to be this big scary thing where you like change your whole life.
Mhm.
It can really just be one step at a time. It really can just be, I'm going to start exploring these things that are coming up. I'm going to start exploring these feelings and these experiences. Maybe I get support from a therapist or a coach. Maybe I read some books. Maybe I talk to some people I trust. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't do any of that. Maybe I just write it down, or maybe I just process it how I process things. But if it's showing up, it's worth taking time to look into, because I am worth the time. We all have inherent worth. Because we exist, we have worth, and because we exist, we are loved. That's like my
Mhm.
core belief.
I love it.
That's what
So true.
the hill I'll die on. Then the other thing, the other like big thing I would say to somebody starting out on this journey is, you are not alone. I
Mm-mm.
guarantee that there are people in your life who you really respect and look up to,
Mhm.
who are experiencing or have experienced very similar experiences or life moments
Yeah.
that you don't know about because they haven't told you.
Mhm.
You are not alone, and you're not broken because you aren't seeing other people broadcast that. It's not a
Yes.
you thing, actually. Because other people are not sharing their experiences, it doesn't mean that you're immediately bad, wrong, and alone.
Mhm.
You can let go of that shame. You can flip off that shame. You can throw it out the window.
Yep.
You can ignore it and sit with the truth that there are so many other people who are doing what you're doing, or who have experienced what you've experienced, that you are
Absolutely.
not alone, and that you are in company of a lot of healers. I always refer to healing as re-breaking. That's what healing has felt like to me.
Mm,
You are in company of rebreakers and of
love that.
change makers. Like, we're
Mhm.
here to do the work, and you're not alone. So I like to envision myself standing shoulder to shoulder with some other people that I know. Like,
Mhm.
I imagine us like literally standing in a line, like on the
Mhm.
battlefront, going into fight,
I
and
love
we're
it.
shoulder to shoulder. We're taking each other's strength, and we're giving it and taking it and using it
Mhm.
to help each other get through this really hard and heavy process at times. So
Yes.
you're not alone,
Yes.
and you don't have to heal all at once, and it doesn't need to be huge. It can just be
Mhm.
what it is.
Yeah. And even if those people in your life haven't revealed themselves, there's so many people online in these spaces, in these communities
Yes.
now
Come
that
sit with us.
just come sit with us, come hang out, come,
Yeah.
even if you're just watching silently, just, I've gotten so many random messages like, I've been a silent follower for so long, and I just have to say, you
Yeah,
really helped me today. And I
absolutely.
had to tell you,
And
and
those
it's
messages
okay.
are affirming. Like, we get those, we hear those,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
like
deeply.
sometimes those messages are literally why I don't like shut it all down and close my business and
Yes.
say, see you later. So such a fun
Yes.
1.5 years in business. See
Yes.
you later. Never doing that again. Like,
I
sometimes
had
that
a
is the
random
reason.
message today that this old guy, I just
Oh, I
whatever.
saw that. He was like unfollowing.
Unfollowed. You're
See you
boring.
later, Patrick.
I was like, okay, bye. I was like,
Uh,
but I was looking back, I was like, wow, years ago I would have been so upset that I
oh my gosh,
disappointed
it would have
someone.
devastated you.
And I
Uh-huh.
was just like, okay,
That somebody
bye.
didn't want to be around you, or that somebody thought you were boring or
And they
stupid or
went out of,
whatever.
and what does it say about someone when they go out of their way to
To
send you
tell
those
you
troll
that.
comments? Like, okay,
He
I'm sorry
needs,
you're unhappy and you're trying to bring people down, but like,
yeah,
I'm good. Thank
he
you.
needs to do work here. That's a very clear indicator that he is
Yes.
hurting,
Yes. And like
because
internet
hurt
trolls and
people
stuff
hurt
too.
people.
That's a thing,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
but
for
that's a
sure.
whole thing. But just know that like for every internet troll, there's like 100 people
Oh,
behind you.
for sure. Like, if we
Easy.
were to mathematically do the ratio, it's probably like literally 1 to 100. I'm not even kidding.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I'm
just
sure.
see
I'm
you
sure.
later to those few, and come
And
sit
a
by
lot of
the
those,
hundreds.
and those people aren't ready to sit with it. So they're being defensive and taking it
Yes.
out on you. Remember
Yep,
that. The more
exactly.
authentically you sit with it and you're shining everything about it, the more people are going to be against you. And sometimes it's your family, to be completely honest.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yep.
It's part of the process, but you just got to set boundaries and remember you're doing exactly what you need to do. And
Yep.
it gets easier. It's
Yep.
never done, but it does get easier
Yep.
every time
Exactly.
you do it. So
Never done. Work in progress.
yes,
Healing,
I
heal,
love it.
healed.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Okay, so if people want to get in contact with you, I know you said you have a podcast. Go off,
Yes.
girl. What's going on?
Oh my gosh. So you can find me on Instagram. That's where I show my face the most.
Fair.
Hello, Emily Stearman is my Instagram handle. You can also find my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's called Speaking to Shame. We just celebrated 1,000 downloads. Super excited,
Nice.
growing. 2022 has some incredible growth in it. We're going to flip shame off and say, see you later, sucker. So
I love it.
And then you can also email me, m@helloemilystearman.com. I really love getting emails. I love getting Instagram DMs. I read them all. I respond to them all. I will always do that. No matter how much growth my business occurs and accrues, I will always be here for you. I also am speaking at a few conferences this upcoming year. I'm speaking at Thriving Women's Conference in San Antonio, Texas, which you can find online. You can find me on Instagram and find all my conference updates if you just want to follow me there. I'm hosting some workshops this upcoming year to help you with your shame, help you with your trauma, help you sit in the shit a little bit better. So I'm out here, I'm working. I would love to connect with you, and I am so ready to help you release your shame. And thank you so much, Taylor, for having me, for talking about overcoming, because this is real. It's happening and it's not going away because we're not talking about it. So let's talk about it.
Exactly. See, I told you, we're just so aligned. It's fine. I was like, we just got to make this happen. I just know this is supposed to happen. Just trust the vibes. Always trust the vibes.
Yes. Immaculate vibes are immaculate. I learned that immaculate. I'm a millennial, and I learned that from a Gen Zer. They said the vibes are immaculate, and now I just keep saying it. My husband keeps going, honey, we're too old for this. We have life insurance and retirement plan. You can't say the vibes are immaculate. You pulled out a chin hair the other day. I was like, you know what? I'm going to choose for myself, and the vibes are immaculate. So just join us. Let your vibes be immaculate too.
Absolutely. And even when they're not, they still are. Remember that. Oh man.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure. Definitely make sure anyone will connect with you, and, go check out her podcast. Go, you'll be entertained endlessly on the Instagram too. So definitely check that out. And, there's some really cool people in this space. Just open your mind, start connecting with people, reach out, send a message, except we read them all. I try to respond to them all. I haven't been able to keep up with all of them. However, just we internalize all the stuff and just appreciate it.
Yes, for sure. We hear it. We're here for it. And thank you.
Always. All right, everyone. Thank you again to Emily for joining us. And I hope you all have whatever day feels right for you. Make sure to share this with people who need some support, understanding it's okay to sit in the shit, because this conversation is one of those that just needs to be amplified. I feel like it's not talked about enough. So
absolutely.
Thank you again for joining, and I will see you all next time. All right. Bye.
Bye.